Welcome everyone. Welcome to the Success Channel. Today we'll be discussing role of in-house counsel, and we have distinguished speakers. So I'll introduce our speakers to you. Our first speaker is Mr. Rohit Salwan. He has 19 years of experience into litigation, non-litigation. He has worked with different, huge size organizations and guided on various high value, transactions as well as recovery of amounts due. He has received a lot of awards, out of which some of like General Counsel Award of the Year. We have another distinguished speaker, Mr. Pulak Gupta. He is head of procurement in Jio Financial Services. He has 19 years of experience into procurement, and he has actually worked with various legal teams day in day out on various legal matters. So definitely he'll have a lot of things to speak with us on in-house counsel. So let's start. I would like to ask Mr. Rohit a question on what is your opinion about in-house counsel's role in companies now in this COVID scenario, and what will be the role after this COVID scenario?
The COVID has actually pushed us into a lot of uncertain situations. As we all know, we have never came across any situations like this, be it legal or non-legal kind of things. But that's how it is. So obviously, in order to deal with that, we have to equip the in-house counsels, have to equip themselves to cater the requirements of the current difficult and the challenge situations. So as I told you, there are so many things that we have never across, like earlier discussions also. So we have discussed that in length. Like typically, I give an example of a small thing, the force measure clause I discussed earlier also. The clause which you and me while vetting the clause in the clause which the least the least importance that we have given to any clauses, maybe the boilerplate clause, and force measure is one of them. I think nobody bothered while getting into or give a reading or give a meaning to that kind of force measure. But yes, the COVID, whenever as soon as the COVID hits, the clause becomes, as I already told, it becomes a overnight hero. The clause which not even getting the supportive role in a movie suddenly becomes a overnight star. Everybody start talking about it. So, but what is anything new about this clause? There is nothing. Everybody knows what this clause about it. But yes, in the current situations, in the current circumstances, we have to put that clause into the COVID kind of situation, and we need to understand whether it actually fits or not. This is a small example I'll give you of a force measure. But yes, there are so many other challenges at the HR level, at the manpower level, at a vendor level. At the litigations also, there is no courts are functioning. Courts are also becomes online. So every day is a new learning for in-house counsel, external counsel, for the stakeholders, for the business, for the government even. All government members in the government agencies working in the weekdays also. But surprisingly, yesterday we saw a new circular from SEBI on Sunday also. So this is what maybe a demand of time for that thing. So yes, we have to, the in-house counsel have to be with the and obviously they learn a lot of from this current situations also.
Right. Mr. Pulak, you have any inputs on this?
Yeah, Mr. Salman said, I mean, I perfectly agree with this, because in the last 3-4 months, I got many queries from a group of my IM alumni group of supply chain management, whether in an agreement which is between the logistics partners and the companies, there is a clause for the force measure clause. So should we execute that force measure clause? What's the criteria for force measure clause? So I'll tell you the appetite, I mean, which Mr. Salman said, the appetite for risk and the affinity of jugaad is all pervasive. COVID-19 has changed the world in more ways than one. It has left many business paralyzed in the absence of a risk management plan. So in-house counsel in that plays a very important role. Now, the ability of business to undertake changes to survive the crisis has been dependent on the team's ability to do the impact assessment and take like decisive decisions. In-house counsel team had a very crucial role to play in managing legal compliance, undertaking contractual risk mitigation, like enabling alternate growth opportunities, and also working with law enforcement agencies to provide support to the online community of traders, and to ensure continuity of business of small and medium enterprise in a safe manner. So I feel that in-house counsel here plays a very vital and important role in my work also area. They played a very important role in executing few of the agreement, in executing few of the force majeure clauses and all.
Right, right. So I also feel that, now this in COVID period, the in-house counsel should be always available to the business and should go through all the documentation, including, if some litigation or threat or some, email threatening something from the customer or the partner is coming, you should go through it and understand what exactly will be the, implications of
Yes.
this after post-COVID scenarios, right? So in-house counsel has a lot of
Yes,
roles
I agree.
on this, right? So now let us think about MSME also. What should be the role of in-house counsel in MSME? Now MSME always says that we don't have funds to appoint in-house counsels. So what do you think about it? Should they have in-house counsels or not?
I'll tell you that the trend of engaging in-house counsel rather than outsourcing to law firms is becoming more common business practice, not only in the big businesses but also for the medium-sized ventures and all. This is what it has been seen in the last few years and all. Notably, this trend has contributed to the hiring of more experienced, mature, and cautious class of people as in-house counsels of businesses to devise and formulate legal strategy for the business, business is involved. While it is too soon to see whether this trend is one that will be beneficial for business, one reasonably understand that rationale behind it. To fully understand the positive implication of this increasingly popular trend, it is important to be aware of this in-house counsel. Now, what role they have played in recent, which I say that in the lockdown, in-house lawyers have to consider two main issues: business continuity, that is most important factor for any business to survive. Now, business continuity, I mean to say that clients, customers, and partners and employee issues. From a customer partner perspective, any risk needs to be assessed carefully, including or ensuring company solvency through cost assessment, cost reduction, and management of commercial contracts, particularly with the force majeure clauses, which I mentioned earlier, and issues around supply of information, tools, and raw materials. And another is that they also played they are also very important, like why government and financial aid must also be monitored particularly carefully, notably tax issues and governmental loans, like interactions with other countries where, countries agreements are there and all, should be considered carefully, both from business and a movement, goods and logistics point of view. I'll just give you one example. There's one contract with my Portugal-based company. Now, there are various clauses which we have never read in the last 5 years. Now, at this situation, we are trying to bring down cost. And we thought that let's read the agreement, how we can terminate these clauses, terminate this agreement. And we hire a lower cost service provider, which is based in India rather than in Portugal or Germany and all. So it took us almost 3 to 4 hours and few in-house counsels to discuss on various parameters. And frankly speaking, and I was shocked to read and to see that we can't terminate that agreement like that. It is not as simple as we thought, that we'll give him a 30 days notice and the agreement will get terminated. No, it is not. There are many clauses which is there, and this could possibly, because we have an in-house counsel team where we discuss together and analyze and then come into a conclusion that we have to terminate this agreement. It will take me 3 to 4 months to terminate this agreement, Abhijit and Mr. Salvan. So, that in-house counsel team plays a very important role over here.
Right. So, Mr. Salwan, you have any views on it?
Yeah, I second with Mr. Pulak on that. Look, the first apprehension, what I see, MSME or small or mid-cap typical companies is the cost. Obviously, there is a cost involved to it, but at the end, if you see a long road, long shot to it, the cost which will be incurred by a company at the end of the day will actually help them. I'll give you a few examples. You know, the in-house counsel, how I see is an in-house counsel, it's basically, it's a catalyst between a business and the external environment. The in-house counsel sitting inside the company knows so many ins and outs of the business. He knows that, you know, the trade and tricks of the business. He knows the documentation of the business. He knows all the chemistry, all the biology, all the science of the company, where, how, and what information he can fetch from the department, from the stakeholders. In fact, and he can communicate that information very clearly to also. The second argument somebody can have it is the same role can also be done by somebody operations guy, somebody business guy, or somebody stakeholder of that matter. Those people can also do the same thing. But yes, the person who has sitting in the company knows the business of it with a legal bent of mind, obviously give you a better result. And if you talk from a perspective from external advocate, I've spoken to many external advocates and they're very comfortable. They're very comfortable while talking to in-house counsel than the business. From the same information we'll get from the business also, and the same information we'll get from the in-house counsel. But the only thing is the effort that the external has to put in getting that information, because both the lawyers, the in-house counsel, as well as external advocates, you know, maybe they talk same thing in the same wavelengths. So obviously it's a period of time and also effort also, and I think we will get better, much better results, I think.
Right. So what I also actually experienced, Mr. Rohit, I also experienced, on the same lines. Advocates are very comfortable even working with these in-house lawyers, because they most of the time they get a lot of work from this in-house lawyer, which is very critical, and the external lawyer needs support for that. Apart from that, actually in-house counsel, if they are working day in day out for the MSMEs, I think they may avoid a lot of disputes also, the disputes which may lead to a lot of cost in future, as explained just now. So in-house counsel, if MSMEs are thinking on that line, they should definitely have some in-house counsels. They should not think about the cost of in-house counsel, what they should do with this in-house counsel, whether it is really helpful or not. Right.
Yeah.
Can we discuss on the benefits of in-house counsel to MSMEs? What may be the benefits? Why they should appoint in-house counsels? Can you give some examples also?
As we told, look, when you hire somebody, when an organization hire an employee, be it any department, I'm saying, the first thing what will happen is the training of the HR, which actually train the employee vis-a-vis the organization's perspective, the business model, how the hierarchy works, and every organization have a different mode of doing things, very different way of doing things, and only somebody who's sitting inside the organization only knows about it. So once you hire an in-house counsel inside the organization, obviously he'll get into that kind of training mode. He'll interact more with those people, or maybe collections or recovery or customer care or operations department for that matter. Because for him, those are their internal clients. Obviously, when you need to cater the internal clients, he will take a brief from those people. He'll take a first-hand the information from the stakeholder, and he will pass it on to the external counsel. So when we talk about the benefit, obviously, when somebody who knows the business in and out, he knows all the tricks and trades of the business in and out, sitting inside the business, when he interact with an external advocate, the results will be absolutely beneficial. Absolutely, unfolds will get the better results, the faster results will get. Yes, benefits will be there. Cost is already, as we discussed, yes, at the end of the day, you will, the time and the energy that you will waste. The business person who will interact with an external counsel, he may be going to do some other business and he get more business,
right,
rather than working on the other things. Yeah. So it could be a win-win situation for both external advocate and the organization also.
I have seen for MSMEs, I have seen a lot of email correspondence also of MSMEs, and I found that they made a lot of small mistakes in these email correspondence. At the end of the day, whenever you communicate and agree to something, it becomes a contract, right? So there are a lot of disputes in relation to this email correspondence. You have agreed that, you have agreed this, and all, and they just end up disputing all, and they end up not doing anything with the other party. So it's better to have this in-house counsel's inputs on each and every email you send to the other party, what you discuss with that, as well as the further documentation and agreements negotiation and all. So we should have everything in place, and for that only an in-house counsel can help this MSME to execute a proper agreement and do the business on time. Yeah, so Pulak, I have a question. Can these in-house counsels have a positive business impact? A positive impact on the business decisions? What is your opinion on it? And should they actually get involved themselves into
Yes,
business?
in-house counsel. Yeah. So in-house counsel has a positive impact on the business. The reason, I mean, see, they are more experienced, and being an in-house counsel, I mean, they are very devised and formulate legal strategy, and diverse litigation of that business is involved because they understand the business very well. So when you are outsourcing, or I mean, there's a big difference between outsourcing your legal thing or in-house counsel. In-house counsel always understands your business importance, the priority of the business and all, and he's very rational behind taking the decisions, various decisions. And as I said earlier, one can be reasonably understand the rationale behind his decisions and all. So it's positive implication of this increasingly having the in-house counsel and all. And it is very important to aware that in-house counsel plays a very important role in terms of taking the decisive decisions with as regards with the your business is concerned.
Right. Mr. Rohit, you have any inputs on this?
And look, I just told you, obviously, a person knows business, knows legal, he will always will give you a better result. I'll take your example that you gave earlier, the business correspondence, simple business correspondence, which actually rounds juxtapose the alternate with the agreement. When we get a lot of agreements to and fro which happen between the organization, and similarly correspondence also happen. So those correspondence also becomes very important. When those kind of contract, while interpreting those kind of contract, and somebody who does not have a legal bent of mind, he has sent some the correspondence and email correspondence sent to the other party, which can give a very different color, different meaning than some clause of the agreement at the eventuality of enforcement, also at the eventuality of interpretation also. Yes, that could be one of the standard which you rightly pointed out earlier. So, of course, somebody who knows the business will obviously will give you a much better result for that matter.
Right.
So I mean, Abhijit, to add here, I mean, just add some advantages of in-house counsel in terms, because I'm from the procurement team. So there are numerous advantages for business employing in-house counsel, which is, I mean, no doubt that why this is becoming an increasingly popular trend. The main factor is the cost. So there are inherent cost savings, since one is not paying external counsel at an hourly rate. It can also significantly reduce unnecessary delays, as in-house counsel exclusively work for you, for your business. Now, for employing rather than third party, the number of different clients, any would have number of different clients, whereas the in-house counsel have the added advantage of being familiar with the business employing them. The result that they already know the company's working environment, its principle, its general ethics. As employee of the business, they will also have the best interest of that company at heart, which may not be in that case of external counsel.
Right. You're right, Pulak. Now, Mr. Rohit, I would like to know a few examples when you actually impress that business decision from a business point of view. Even if you are in a legal, but you guided the business and then you impressed on the business decision.
Sorry, I didn't get the question, please.
The question is, I would like to understand the example when you actually impressed a business decision, and it was positive, impression from a legal point of view, and the business actually entered into that business, or they had not entered into a business because of your inputs and all.
Okay, I give you a small example. Obviously, now being all experienced guys in the industry for good 10, 15 years, we have seen so many audits, internal, external, RBI, statutory audit, we have seen everything. I give one small example without quoting the transactions and the organization for that matter. There was typically a customer related issue was there, a very small kind of issue. So there was a surplus which is there in the balance sheet of a company, of an NBFC. So what are those surplus? Those surpluses are the excess foreclosure that they have collected, excess interest they have collected for somehow, for some calculation error. And those are very small amount like 50 rupees, 100 rupees, 1000 rupees. But if you multiply into lakh contract, that amount was into some crore rupees. Over a period of time, that amount collected into crore rupees, from a transaction value, you see maybe you only see 1000 rupees, 500 rupees, 550, maybe some reconciliation issue or something like that. But that was sitting on the balance sheet as an income item kind of thing. So when statutory audit come, and when the audit, they will see this is what kind of item is this, and that item will tend to amount to be a what do you call the deposit. They'll consider it as a deposit. So if you will take this matter to an external counsel, they may or may not advise. I'm not this is maybe from a law firm, they'll have all kind of big law firms. I'm not going to name that. But big law firms, they have a very different departments. Somebody who's a tax expert, somebody who's a finance expert, somebody who's a account expert. They're all expert, domain expert people. But
right.
Not because we are giving stress mainly small cap, or mid cap, or MSME kind of company, which obviously cannot approach the big stalwarts of a law firm. So when you go to an external advocate, he may or may not give you advice to the fact that collecting this small amount also leads to a statutory complication vis-a-vis deposit, because an NBFC, who is a non-deposit company, you cannot collect any amount. It's a 500 rupees, 100 rupees for over a period of time. So, as in-house counsel, when you know, when you have an experience, you have came across all those kind of audit queries from the external, audit. When you came across the same queries from the RBI also, even addressing a small thing, can you deposit? Can I factor that amount into balance sheet, and rather after and all those customer, beauty of this situation which I'm giving you, all those customer may or may not be contactable also. But what to do about that typical item which is sitting in your balance sheet as a deposit, and can be a very give a very very bad eye statutory auditor perspective. Small example I give you, lot of item, and it came how this problem triggered. It triggered from a very small customer complaint, which across, and which will find this is and when we actually dig into it, we'll find there is a lot of we are sitting on this small amount from a very large point of time, and these are all recurring this thing. You have to you have to give a permanent solution to this also, the current problem also, and so that we should not collect these kind of access, or maybe as an in-house counsel, you say weekly reconciliation. If you can't have weekly reconciliation, have a weekly reconciliation. Weed out those kinds of items which give you a very bad face, a very wrong face in front of the statutory authority for that matter, and external auditor for that matter. Small example, but this how one came across this kind of solution only when the person with a legal bent of mind be there in the system. He knows all in and out of the system. He knows what the problem is. I am not from a finance background. I am from a science background. I may or not be knowing the balance sheet. But why I am knowing all these jargons of the balance sheet? Because I have seen as an in-house counsel across 16, 17, I have seen outs of the company, how they work, how the finance work, how the balance sheet work, how the profit work, how the losses work. May or may not be a very good, great item or maybe great interest item for an external advocate. So for me, this is a very great and very small example, and I have came across this example in very two different organizations, also same problem.
Right, right. Mr. Pulak, you have something to say on this?
I fully agree. I mean, I just wanted to ask for one of my, for my knowledge, I mean, we are talking about the benefits of in-house counsel, and there are many benefits which we discussed in the last 30 minutes. Now, what is disadvantage of having the in-house counsel?
The disadvantage, what I see from management perspective, is the cost, which they think is additional. Obviously, the legal department comes under support services. So support services is an additional cost for them. So that's the only disadvantage. Otherwise,
no. No, I think the in-house counsel has a benefit of cost because these are inherent cost saving. Like we are not paying at the hourly rate, we are paying in-house. So I think there's a cost saving. What I understood from the discussion, the only disadvantage is that employing in-house counsel is that they cannot appear as an advocate before the court. Is it? Am I correct? I mean, because I'm not a lawyer, so
correct.
I mean, just asking the experts.
Absolutely, you can only in-house counsel if you are hiring him as a retainer. So there is a catch. In-house counsel, if you as a retainer, means it's not on your roles. But yes, he's an offerer kind of guy. He's on a retainership basis. Yes, he can also appear. But yes, if he's rules, he cannot appear. That's a code of conduct, bar council's code of conduct. He cannot. But yes, I just want to take it from what you stated. But what very important thing that we miss is an role of an authorized representative before the courts. So there are a lot of the petitions will file, the criminal, non-criminal, the civil, the quasi-criminal, the arbitration petition will file. And every petition, every judicial proceeding has to be backed with an affidavit. And that affidavit has to be signed by an authorized representative of a company over oath. Before he has to take oath and he has to sign that yes, whatever statements, whatever facts which is there in the petition is absolutely correct at the best of his knowledge or at the best of the record that he has actually perused. So that affidavit is very important. The person who is of no bent of mind, he can go and sign anything. I am not doubting the integrity of an external counsel, but there is always when second person, when two person give a look at a draft, they will always look from a very different perspective. I am telling you. So maybe something is missed. There is a concept called maker and checker. If external counsel is a maker, in-house counsel can be act as a very good candidate, very good checker. Whatever he has said, whether it is absolutely facts, whether it is absolutely true, this is the records and the facts of the company. And legally also there should not be anything we should go because once it is written, it is done and dusted. You can't come back and retract from what you have stated. So this is also very. And the second important thing, not only the petition. When he has to go and give an evidence, when he has to give a statement before the court, somebody who has a legal bent of mind can actually tackle the court, that the proceedings, the opposite counsel, for that matter in cross examination, he can, I think, handle much better that situation or that pressure situation, frankly speaking. Because I have seen many critical situations where you really need a person who knows the legal as well as the facts before the courts also. So they are also in-house counsels pretty handy. I'm telling you with my experiences.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Pulak, I guess the in-house counsel should be jack of all trades. He may be master of none, but he should be jack of all trades. And in practice, sometimes it happens that the advocates practice only in one field, like civil or criminal or arbitration. Right? There are few advocates who practice in each and every field. So for in-house counsel, it is always like he should be master, a jack of all the trades. He should know arbitration, he should know criminal, he should know civil, he should know appeals, like lower court proceedings also, the day-to-day processes he should know. He is actually, it is expected from him that once the business is approaching him for some opinion, he should be in position to give opinion on that. It is, if it is something new, like if it is a green tribunal related matter, which is not related to software industry, but now some matter appears someday in relation to green tribunal, he should be in position to guide on the matter. So basically, his mind should be, to support each and every business concept, as well as each and every law, the processes involved and all. He should be in position to do that. So I don't think, it's a negative point. It's positive point, because the in-house counsel is always available to the business 24/7, which is not possible in case of
Yeah,
law firm.
that is there. Yes.
It is not, possible in case of law firm, because law firms,
yes, correct.
there are a number of hours. Some law firms may be working beyond that work hours also, but then again, costing is involved, right? So, from costing point of view, I can say that in-house counsel is always better. But I'm not saying that external counsel is not required. External counsel is also equally important, because when it comes to defending the matter in the court of law, what you will do, you will just explain the matter. But the rest of the thing, in-house counsel is, the external lawyer is doing for you. So the lawyer is actually there on, the front and fighting for us, right? It's just like a soldier who fights on the, the boundary, but the boundaries of the India. So both the lawyers as well as in-house counsel are equally important, I'm saying. So there is no negatives or positives as such in relation to both of them.
So when I see both sides, I'll always call it as active as passive litigation. So what is active litigation? Active litigation is done by the external counsels. He can appear, before the court. He can argue. He can present before the court. But what is passive litigation? Passive litigation is done by the in-house counsel. So what in-house counsel does, in-house counsel extracts all the facts, all the documentation, and he'll convince the external counsel. This is the facts and the documents he has, and the external counsel will take a cue from in-house counsel, and he will further convince the court for that matter. So this is a complete chain. So there is an in-house counsel and there is a court. So passive litigation means you need to convince your in-house counsel first, and then you need to convince the external counsel, who will in turn, convince the judge also. And there are some decisions taken by the management's basis few, risk perspective also. So what in-house counsel need to do, he has to make a balance between the external counsel and the management, because there are so many things management doesn't buy as it is from its management. He want to second it from its in-house counsel also. What is your opinion? External counsel is of this view. If in-house counsel is also of the same view, then there are ensured, yes, somebody who is in my company, who is in my organization, is also seconding what the external counsel is saying. So it is more important for them to react on that.
Yeah, so basically, I submit that business should be aware the engagement of in-house counsel has the potential to limit the scope of the solution that will be presented to them. It is therefore of a paramount importance that in-house counsel be fully conversant with the legal system and the functioning of the court system. So, since the court, my submission to, you guys are from this field. So, since the court system in India is already overburdened, in-house counsel should encourage the use of EDR as a means of settle disputes that arises. This will also provide the business with better flexibility and allow it to retain more control over the dispute that otherwise have it embarked on litigations. Just view, from you guys, because you guys from this field and masters in this field.
Over a period of time, few new concepts have actually came across, as you said, with data, if I'm saying. So there is a one thing called in-house arbitration kind of concept which started actually. And what is in-house arbitration is, like, there will be an external arbiter. Obviously, you need to have an arbitrator who's outside your organization, who is independent to your organization. But in in-house arbitration, the in-house counsel only talks and will communicate with the arbitrator. You don't require any advocate kind of thing. Yeah. And obviously, in the matters which is not have that much worth, or with a certain ticket size, management can take a call, and that can be done in-house also. So we will call it as an in-house arbitration. What is in-house arbitration? There is no external counsel, as simple as that. You, at the end of the day, you will save the cost of the arbitrator. Yes, pleading you can outsource in that. This is a very small example I give you when you talk about the ADR thing. So there are mediation, there are reconciliation, and in fact in the NCLT proceedings also, when all the CIC and everything have been formed, you need an in-house counsel to go and represent company, because they may not like the external counsel to to bar into that proceeding. Once CIC has been formed, then you become a typically a board member of a company in the insolvency matter. They don't like an external advocate to come and to hijack the entire thing. There also in-house counsels becomes very handy. I am telling you. Those are few experiences. The role and the importance of in-house counsel is very and very important for that matter.
So even in case Pulak, in case of like drafting of agreements or legal documents, if you approach some outside firm, it's too, involve a lot of cost. Now, for an example, in 5 years, I have actually personally not visited any law firm in relation to drafting of agreements. I haven't got any agreement drafted from any law firm. So this actually saves cost of 5 to 10 crores for in 5 years. If you see this saving, if you see this saving, it's not anywhere on records, but then definitely it's a saving for an organization, right? So accordingly, the same like Rohit pointed out in relation to litigation, in-house counsel may chip in many areas wherein he can save cost for the organizations. Day to day, opinions. If you go on for opinion on a small email, definitely law firm will charge you a huge amount for that. Right? We
both have faced this in 2016-17, Abhijit, where we used to pay huge amount to an external counsel every month, and I was like frustrated that why this huge amount is going for a simple drafting of agreements.
Right.
And there are many such agreements, 40-50 agreements per month and all. Right. After the in-house counsel and all, probably we paid nothing in the last 3 years. We paid nothing to any external counsel agency, and though we have almost 50 plus agreements per month, kind of.
Right.
Almost daily on an average 1 or 2 agreements.
So basically, in-house, lawyers have
that's a very
in-house counsels have a lot of role to play in day-to-day business activities. There is one point which I would like to discuss specifically with Rohit, because considering the education in different fields, most of the time it is said that a lawyer should learn only law. If you go for some interview, then for in-house counsel, the question is like you should learn only law. Why this question is there, and should only in-house counsel learn law, or should go beyond that and learn something else?
No. I feel that in-house counsel should learn. Should have a knowledge of product also, to learn. The knowledge what is. As per their companies who they are working, the business of that company. If they are into the payment system, they should understand the payment. They should understand the various types of payment. They should understand the various companies doing the business in the similar line of business and all. Not only in the law.
Right. What is your opinion, Mr. Rohit?
Correct. I absolutely agree. For in-house counsel, I told you the internal clients for in-house counsel are the various departments, very stakeholders like business for that matter, marketing department. There is an HR. There is a procurement team for that matter. So the customer care which is there. So as an in-house counsel, you will not be able to cater your client unless until you don't know them. If you don't know the business, how the business has been done by the particular department, you will not be able to serve them. Yes, obviously, there is no harm, updating your knowledge. As I told you, I am from a science background. I really don't know. I have a gym idea what is the how does the statement of accounts looks like, how to read about it, what is foreclosure. It's all something which I never learned during my academics. But yes, over a period of time, I know, because until unless I really don't know these documents, I am not been able to give a very good services to the authority for that matter. So yes, I have equipped myself. I learned from during my job. It's not important that you need to learn it from an external source. The team which is sitting there will give you a lot of information. Like if you talk about you need to give a service to Treasury Department. Treasury Department will tell you how the borrowing happens in the external market. What are the challenges? So you also, while getting documents, the plain area of Treasury, and you will actually act accordingly. So yes, absolutely. Other than law, you need to learn the tricks of the trade. Otherwise, you don't know the tricks of the trade. You don't know the client of. So let's take an example of external counsel. External counsel who has nothing to do with business. So let's understand a divorce lawyer. Divorce lawyer, until unless doesn't know the nature, the characteristics of his client, I tell you from my experience, will not be able to give a very good advice to that to the person who has actually come to him for seeking divorce. So that's very simple. No, that same principle applies to in-house counsel. When you need to give an opinion to any department, let's say customer care department for that matter, you need to understand how the department works. What are their pain areas? What exactly they want from me? Because they may have standard draft, but those standard draft may or may not be updated to the updated as per law. So you need to sit with them. You need to understand what exactly is their department. Any department for that matter. You take example of any department. Obviously, you need to learn the trick of trades of that department unless until you've not been able to serve them. That's my personal experience also, my personal opinion and personal advice to all the newcomers in the in making who are coming into really wanted to join as an in-house counsel.
Right. So, from all this discussion we are having since last 40-50 minutes, what we understood is that in-house counsel's role is very, very important for MSMEs, small companies, big companies, right? Everyone, because day to day, this in-house counsel help them to grow their business, run their business, right? He or she is part and parcel of the entire business team itself. Secondly, the in-house counsel should every day learn a lot of things, not only law, but apart from law, if possible, take certifications. But if he's not taking certification, but learning something, definitely it's a add-on, because he can understand different businesses, and on the basis of that understanding, he can guide his or her business, right? In-house counsel can save a lot of cost to the organization in crores, right, by providing in-house services. So it's always better to have an in-house counsel for MSMEs, small companies, big companies, large companies, right, to save huge cost, as well as to get guidance from time to time, every day, every minute, for every transaction of the business, to protect the business from the litigation. But before ending, I will say that it's not that like advocates are not important. They are equally important. They are part and parcel of this entire chain, and we have to work hand in hand to protect the interest of the organizations. So Mr. Rohit and Mr. Pulak, thank you very much for being here and guiding us and providing your knowledge over here. We'd like to have you both in our coming next sessions also. So thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Vijay. Thank you.